mamas, here's my coaching on modifying squats. Hey mamas, welcome to modifying squats. So when we're pregnant, a lot of times getting into normal positions can feel a little bit weird. We've got this belly to work around, our hips are in a little bit different alignment. So here's some ways that we can approach squats if your normal squat pattern is feeling a little off. So normally when we squat, we have our feet just about under our hips, maybe a little bit wider. But during pregnancy, what I really like to do is just bring those feet a little extra wide, turn the toes out, okay? So that you're just creating more space for the belly, for the pelvis, so that as we squat and we go down, we're not having to really compensate and lean forward. Because our center of gravity is shifting forward during pregnancy, so by having a wider base, we don't have to compensate forward and back quite so much, okay? But we want to make sure too here that we're still really pushing the hips back as we sit down during pregnancy, because the tendency, becomes to balance. We tend to drive the knees forward a little bit more, but we want to make sure that we widen up our stance so that we can still really sit back and use those glutes to activate our squat. Number two, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my ball real quick. And you can use a ball, you can use a bench or a seat or any kind of surface. But this, by using something where your tailbone and your butt can hit at the bottom of the squat, it relieves some of that pressure at the end range. So our pelvic floor and our hips, they might not like to move through quite as big of a range, and to have that nice support at the bottom can be really helpful, especially if you're doing a load, like if you're doing a back squat and you want to use a bench or a chair, that can be really helpful. So here I'm just going to come down. This is going to help me feel like I can really sit back without having to lean too far forward, and that's just going to give me this little bit of support on the pelvic floor so that I don't feel like that extra pressure there at the bottom. It gives me that little spring to come back up. And again, chair, bench, box, whatever you got, but those supported squats at the bottom can be really helpful. All right, number three. Grab something that's like 1 inch thick or two of somethings. My ball's coming back. Okay. Even if you have a small step or anything that you can stick on the ground. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to prop my heels up. I'm going to prop just my heels up on these books. My toes are still going to be on the floor. Now this is going to allow me to narrow my stance a little bit and kind of keep my toes a little bit more forward, but still be able to get into a nice deep squat. Okay, so from here, we want to push the hips back, we want to sit down, and we're going to feel how elevating the heels really helps us to stay in that nice alignment. Again, we're going to still be driving through our heels, squeezing our butt. But I really like this modification during pregnancy especially, so that I don't have to go real wide with my feet. When I go real wide, I tend to get some pubic symphysis discomfort. So by elevating my heels, I can keep my feet relatively narrow and still get a nice full range without having to lean or any of that other funky stuff. All right, finally, my last favorite pregnancy modification is to have some form of support. So whether it's a railing or a countertop, right here I'm just going to use my little shelf here. Not ideal, it's better to have something you can kind of grab around. But for now I'm just going to use this as my counter support. So I'm going to use my arms to kind of leverage me so I can really sit back. See how I'm really pushing the hips back as I use my arms to support me so that I'm not going to fall onto my butt. Okay, so again, this allows me to keep this nice narrow stance, to keep my pelvis really stable, but also really sit back into this squat and fire up the glutes, which we want to keep really strong during pregnancy. So besides that, the other thing you can do is hold a counterweight. So, a dumbbell or a kid or anything out in front of you here, so that as you sit back, you can maintain that balance. That counterweight here allows you to sit back a little bit farther into your squat. So hopefully this is helpful. Feel free to share. Thanks, guys.